Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Andre and I'm your bookworm, and today we are getting back into one of the best universes here on the channel, and that is the Lord of the Mysteries universe, because we are reviewing Volume 5. For the ones that are new to the channel, Lord of the Mysteries is a web novel, a Chinese web novel that I've been reading here on the channel. It's written by Qian Shui De Wuzei, or Cuttlefish That Loves Diving. You can check out all the reviews from the previous volumes here on the channel through the thumbnails or the cards up above. I've also done several videos just about the world building of this world, because it's such a huge world building that it deserves a lot of dissecting and also spoilery just chats about this. This is probably the universe I've spoken most about in this channel, so check all of that, and if you're curious still and want to see the review for this volume, then you're in the right place. So Lord of Mysteries is a steampunk, Victorian era, urban fantasy, all of those words together, keywords together. And I don't want to spoil much about what it is about, but you'll see through the synopsis. But anyways, this web novel was recommended by a friend. That's why I started reading it. It's my first web novel, and I'm enjoying it so far. You've seen by the previous reviews that there are parts that I really love, other parts that I sometimes struggle with a bit. But overall, it's been an amazing journey. Now, I don't have a date by which this volume itself was published, because the chapters were kind of published every week, one at a time. And what I can say is that this volume reaches chapter 1150, which kind of gives you a sense of how long this story has been. And we're not even done. There's still 4 more volumes, if I'm not mistaken. So there's still quite a bit to read. Of course, the volumes start decreasing in size, but still, that's lots of chapters. Now, in regards to scores and ratings, I will do the reviews taking into account Goodreads. I know that Goodreads is not the best place for web novels. There are other websites that probably picture the scores and the ratings more accurately, but just for consistency, we'll stick with Goodreads. And on Goodreads, this volume has over 2,000 ratings, and the average score it has is a 4.72 out of 5. Now, that is a huge score. It's super high, but again, we don't have that many ratings, so it could change it once you reach 10,000 or 20,000 or 100,000. So take that into account when looking at the score. But I'm not saying that the score is lying or that it is a bad volume, no whatsoever. You will see by my review that I still think that this score is quite accurate to what it deserves. So let's get on with it instead of me talking so much about what the score deserves or not. Before we jump into the review, we just have 2 housekeeping items. The first one is the synopsis. I'm going to narrate the synopsis to you, which the synopsis is always the same throughout the volumes. It's always the same blurb, so if you've heard it before, you don't want to hear it anymore, you can skip to the next timestamp and you'll jump right into the review of this volume. Otherwise, you can stick around and hear me narrate the same thing. With the rising tide of steam power and machinery, who can come close to being a beyonder? Shrouded in the fog of history and darkness, who or what is the lurking evil that murmurs into our ears? Waking up to be faced with a string of mysteries, Joe Mingri finds himself reincarnated as Klein Moretti in an alternate Victorian-era world where he sees a world filled with machinery, cannons, dreadnoughts, airships, different machines, as well as potions, divination, hexes, tarot cards, sealed artifacts. The light continues to shine, but mystery has never gone far. Follow Klein as he finds himself entangled with the churches of the world, both orthodox and unorthodox, while he slowly develops newfound powers thanks to the Beyonder potions, like the corresponding tarot card, the Fool, which is numbered 0, a number of unlimited potential. This is the legend of the Fool. Alright, and now our second housekeeping item is just taking a look at the scores of the previous 4 volumes, just so you can see how my ratings are and how I'm feeling regarding the series so far, so you get an expectation of what is to come. But as you can see, first volume was definitely the worst so far, and by worst it doesn't mean that it was bad, it just had a lower score, a lot because of the writing. I've gone through it several times, not going to go through it again, but you can see that quickly these volumes gained a big jump in quality. You have a volume with 5, 4.6, 4.8. As you can see, it's all very high. And you can look at the world building and the enjoyment and see that they've been a consistent 5 throughout all of the books. So that tells you that world building is really good, and it tells you that it's fun to read, at least for me. Now, will this be the same case for this volume? Let's check it out, starting with plot. Alright, with our plot, we continue the journey of Klein. He's in Backland, and he kind of stays most of the time there. Of course, we see some jumps to different locations from now and then, but it's very sporadic. It doesn't mean that he goes to a certain place and stays there for the entirety of the volume like it had happened in previous volumes. Now, this has its pros and cons, as I've mentioned in previous volumes. I don't particularly like to stay always in the same place, but because we still travel for other plot points, I think that kind of balances a bit. Now, I also enjoyed the fact that a lot of these different plot points, which there are so many of them, because it feels like instead of reducing the plot points, it feels like this volume just had so many occurring at the same time. Some of them had been put in pause many volumes ago, and then they are being brought up to the surface. But it felt like we were dealing with so many things, which is good because you're never bored. You're never feeling like there's something missing or some plot points left open. At the same time, it can be a bit overwhelming. However, I think that because a lot of these plot points were related to Qian and other characters, especially with the Tarot Club characters, that had an advantage, which is you see both plots moving forward, but also the character development happening, which I'll mention in the character category. But just so you know that there are different plot points happening with just Qian and with Qian and the other characters, and I think those ones were really good. The ones with Qian, more or less. I think one of the best strategies of Qian just creating chaos to make chaos kind of be his advantage. In previous volumes, it had been done. I don't think it had been done to the best, because now that he is doing it again, I can fully understand. I think it's a lot smarter and it makes a lot more sense what he's trying to do by creating chaos, by inviting many people to the same party and just let them blow up everything pretty much. I think that was fun. I think it was good. It created a lot of twists that kept happening in basically every page you just read, and there was twist. But that's because of the chaos. And it is very coherent because it makes sense. With chaos, you cannot predict what's going to happen, so you get surprised a lot of times. And of course, we cannot talk about twists without talking about the twist at the end. Oh my god, that cliffhanger I was left speechless, because I don't want to spoil because this is a review, but when that last chapter happened and then the volume ends, I was like, holy, because you definitely need to pick up the next volume right away to figure out what's happening. And at the point that I'm at, I've already solved some of the issues. Let's just say that a potion has been digested, so that helped. But I mean, there was a huge plot twist right after in the volume 6, but that is volume 6. That will be put into the review of volume 6. But what I'm just saying is that cliffhanger was a twist that I did not see coming, was done very well, and it created so many stakes. It elevated them right off the bat for volume 6. So that was done very well. Now, the only thing that I want to mention regarding this plot is the fact that when the plot lines involved just Qian, it felt like they could be dragged a tiny bit too much. So there were points where I felt slightly bored because the plot seemed to be meandering a bit around Qian trying to digest his potion, around trying to do the same things, or just a bit of maintenance of things that could have been chopped a bit more. But I mean, it's not a huge deal. I think this category deserves a 5- out of 5. But then again, it's still a 5, it's just maybe not as perfect as it could have been in other volumes. Alright, moving on to characters. One of my criticisms from the previous volume is that the characters from especially the Tarot Club had been put a tiny bit in the background. And I think this was completely solved in this volume because Qian has so many plot points where he needs to interact with other characters, or even there are plot points where the characters need to interact with each other and not necessarily with Qian, and they are just as amazing. It allows for us to get to know more characters, get to know them well, but also see their development as they are progressing through their own sequences. And of course, this all interacts with Qian and allows him to also develop, to fail in some cases, to have moments that are super funny, like for example with Audrey and Leonard in a certain dream world that becomes very funny to witness because of everything that he is trying to do. It almost gets undermined by one simple accident. So I think that has been really good. And not only the Tarot Club characters, but there are other secondary characters that become more relevant, that show up more, that interact more with Qian. And I really enjoy that, especially to understand. But some of these characters have twists associated to them that I was not expecting, that I was left speechless as well. And I think that is the good thing, is how when these characters interact with the plot and synergize and improve both of them. And of course, all these characters are interacting with the world building because we are seeing their sequences, we are getting to know more about the world, and because they are so scattered across different places, it's also really good to see how different parts of the world are being affected by the events happening. So overall, I think this category deserves a 5 out of 5. Alright, let's talk about world building, and world building is usually the crowning jewel of this series because, as you saw previously, it has a 5 in every single volume. Even the first one, where I thought it wasn't that great, I think the world building was the shining thing that made this story really good. So what about this volume? I think this volume is no exception. We continue to explore this world, we continue to explore the history, we continue to explore the magic systems, and it never ends. And it doesn't feel overly complex as well. I mean, maybe at the start it was more, but by this volume you fully understand how things work. You're just trying to discover more things. And as you discover, your mind just keeps blowing because there are so many things that make sense when you reach certain points, but then you weren't expecting. I mean, I'm talking more about volume 6 here, where after a certain potion was digested, it was due to a big piece of information about world building that got revealed that I was not expecting whatsoever, but looking back, makes a lot of sense. So you can see that the author is able to create a world that is consistent with itself, that has a huge history. You can keep diving into the history and knowing more, but also just the magic system keeps being fresh. And you think when he's probably at what, sequence 5, that by the time he reaches sequence 3 to 1, it'll just be a lot of hand-wavy magic, because in the end they're gods, so how can the powers continue to elevate? But he's able to do that, and I think he does it really well, to the point where my sense of belief keeps going on, and I don't think it ever breaks, or I think, oh, this is just too hand-wavy, or just too Deus Ex Machina, which kind of would still make sense because they are gods, so Deus Ex Machina would, in theory, work, but he doesn't need to use those devices. I think everything in the world is just coherent enough that all that he adds makes complete sense. So I think this volume is going to be another one where the world building is a 5 out of 5. Okay, our last technical category is writing style, and what do we have to say about it? Prose has been good. I think that has been improving steadily throughout the volumes. I think there isn't much description, and if there are, I barely understand them all. Sometimes some of the things I need to reread a second time, but I think that is only more the translation rather than actually the author writing something that I don't understand. And I think the only problem that I've seen in this volume was more regarding the pacing, because like I mentioned, when the pacing was centered on Klein and his solo plot points, it could feel a bit of a meandering, in the sense that he would just slowly get to it and slowly try to find a solution, and there were points where it was just not really advancing at the same speed as other plot points, or at the same, it's just that maybe the plot points that evolved of the characters were the peaks, and Klein, when he was by himself, was always a valley, and that kind of became a pattern that felt a bit slow and a bit boring for the entirety of the volume. That is the only thing that I could actually criticize, because I think, for example, messages and themes of this volume were also really good. They're explored in an intelligent way, and having the different characters interact with each other was good for this case as well, to explore these themes of like poverty and slavery and like different kingdoms fighting each other and a certain war, and how higher people, nobles, etc., portray war, or how people are manipulated to think things. All of that I think was done very well. And I think the ending, towards the ending, the final battle kind of was a very classic Cuttlefish that loves diving. At least towards these volumes, I've seen this pattern of the final battle become quite chaotic, moving forward really fast, and then suddenly it stops, it slows down, and then something big happens again. Which I don't see anything wrong with it. It's just funny that I'm noticing this pattern. I like it, I enjoyed it. Overall, I think this category will have a 4 out of 5. And finally, our last category, which is enjoyment. It is a subjective category, which is more about, did I have fun reading this volume or not? And I did. I always think that reading Lord of the Mysteries is a fun read because it's light, it's never super descriptive, and there's always something happening, some plot lines, some discoveries, some twists, so it's always fun to read. Even if it's like 1,000 chapters, I'm still enjoying it. However, like I mentioned in the previous categories, I think that this book suffered a bit of a slog in regards to Klein and his progression through the potions, because in the end, the author needs to figure out how Klein can advance through the potions fast enough to reach a sequence 1 eventually at the end of the story. So I think those parts felt a bit like maintenance, and it reminded me a tiny bit of volume 1, when there was a lot of chat about maintenance things like coins or just the day-to-day things. But in this volume is different, it's completely different, but it still had that reminiscent feeling. I can't quite exactly describe it. What I want to say is basically my enjoyment was never at a 5 like it has been in previous volumes, and this might also just be because I got a bit fatigued of Lord of the Mysteries. I don't think it is, because I'm still reading, I'm still enjoying it. It's just happenstance, it might have been the period where I read I wasn't enjoying it as much due to other circumstances. But overall, I think that this volume, I'm going to give a 4 plus out of 5. And that leads us to the end of our review. Just as a refresher, we have 5 minus for plot, 5 for characters, 5 for world building, 4 for writing style, and 4 plus for enjoyment. And this gives us a final score of 4.6 out of 5, with the minus and the plus kind of evening out, so it gives a 4.6 out of 5. Now, this is not a bad score. It's equivalent to the score of Volume 2, which I still enjoyed it. I still thought it was a good volume, but it wasn't as great as the previous two in my mind. Of course, 4.6 is still an amazing score. Goodreads has a 4.72, so they kinda are similar. Of course, if I had 4.8, it would be closer even, but a 4.6 overall is good. I think maybe if I reread this volume another time, I think my score might have changed to be higher, but as a first impression, a 4.6 is what I'm sitting at. I'm still very curious to continue reading this story and reach the end of it, because I bet things are just going to keep improving and keep escalating, because we've passed the halfway point. We're now getting closer and closer to the end, and as this occurs, I think all the categories will get up, because the technical categories are excellent. I mean, plot, character, world building, they are 5s, and writing style has been going between 5 and 4. So as long as it keeps at that quality, I think my enjoyment will just follow right suit, and it will just be an amazing ride till the end. But I think now it's time for you to tell me what you think. Do you think this volume is the best one? It is better than 4 or 3 or whatsoever? Or do you agree with me and this one has decreased a tiny bit in quality? Comment down below. And if you're new, don't forget, subscribe, like the content, and you shall be seeing me on Thursdays and Sundays. Okay? See you.